How to draw a zero line using the sector method. The zero line is defined as a line passing through the inside edge of the top of the back of the box. This is the reference line from which all measurements are made, height as well as standards depth. The proper way to draw a zero line is to carefully and precisely construct one so that the zero line is perpendicular to a line running through the center of the runway. A common suggestion for drawing a zero line is to use a 3-4-5 triangle. A 3-4-5 triangle is also known as a right triangle, which means that it contains a 90-degree angle. To construct a 3-4-5 triangle, you would stand at the middle of the back of the box and draw 3-meter arcs to either side of the box. Next, you would move to a point 4 meters from the box in the center of the runway and draw 5-meter arcs that intersect the arcs drawn in the first step. Lastly, you would draw a line connecting the intersections of the pairs of arcs and hope that it passes through the back of the box. If there had been any errors in your process, the line may be crooked or may not pass through the back of the box. Another problem with this method is it requires 2 people. I wanted to find a method that could be done by 1 person. That led me to think about sectors. Sectors are used in throwing events, and since they are not permanent marks on the field, they must be constructed before each meet. A sector for a throwing event is created by measuring a distance c along the sector lines and maintaining a separation distance d. The sector would be built by measuring a series of measurements c and different measurement lengths d. If we imagine a sector centered on the runway with the zero line as the back of the sector, it would look something like this. Adding a center line would help to ensure that as you lay out the sector, it is balanced and equidistant from the center line. I decided to break up the sector into 4 parts because I knew that a small error at the beginning of the layout could become a large error by the time I got to the zero line. Putting it all together, it would look something like this. 2 sector lines with 4 measurements along each sector line, C1, C2, C3, and C4, and the distance between the sector lines represented by D1, D2, D3, and D4. How do you determine the length of the measurements along the sector for your measurements of lengths C1 through C4? I started with a 3-4-5 triangle and then scaled it up or scaled it down using a scaling factor. Because each of these triangles is derived from a 3-4-5 triangle, they are also right triangles. By having a center line, what you will be doing is constructing back-to-back right triangles as you move toward the zero line. Note that the sector-to-sector spacing, d, is 2 times b, the horizontal length of each triangle. This process requires 4 tape measures. 2 fiberglass tape measures were used for the sector lines. A steel tape measure was used for the runway center line. An 8-meter metal tape measure was used to measure the sector spacing distances D1, D2, D3, and D4. The final result looks like this. A sector has been set up using the values shown in the table. You have 2 sector lines and 4 sector spacing lines, D1, D2, D3, D4. The final sector spacing line, D4, is the zero line. It will be 7.2 meters long and would extend beyond the pit on both sides. Let's do a step-by-step review of the sector method. Step 1. Mark the center of the box. Because the inside edge of the box has curved corners, use the back edge of the box to verify that you've got the center of the box. If you do not mark the true center of the box, your runway line will be skewed and not lie along the middle of the runway. This would cause your zero line to also be skewed and not pass straight through the back of the box. Step 2. Mark the center of the runway at 4.8 meters. Step 3. Place a tape measure from the center of the box along the center of the runway. In this photo, that is the yellow tape measure. The left edge of the tape measure lies on the runway center line. Step 4. Anchor the sector tape measures in the center of the runway at 4.8 meters from the box. Note that the sector spacing should be measured from the center to center of the two sector line tape measures. The next steps are drawing a series of right triangles. Using the values shown in the table, you would set up a measurement along the sector line, in this case 1.25 meters, and then measure a sector to sector spacing of 1.50 meters. As pointed out before, this is twice the leg length, 0.75, on the horizontal dimension of each triangle. Verify that the sector spacing is equally spaced on the center line. Once you finish with your measurements, tape and tack the sector line tapes to the surface to prevent wind from lifting them up. You'll move on to your next point, going out 2.5 meters on the sector lines and measuring a sector to sector spacing of 3 meters. As before, tack and tape the sector line tape measures before moving on to your next measurements. You will do 2 more measurements. The next one is a 5-meter measurement along the sector with a spacing of 6 meters. Note that for this measurement you would have to have the plug in place. The measurement at the center line is over the box. Finally, you'll do your last measurement, 6 meters along each sector line, and set up a zero line with a 7.2 meter spacing. This will assure that your zero line extends beyond both sides of the pit. To verify that your zero line is the proper length and does pass over the back of the box, tack a string from sector to sector and then inspect where that string falls over the box. In the pictures, the yellow string passes over the center of the tape measure at exactly 6 meters. The center picture shows the string as it passes over the back of the box, and this is exactly in line with the inside edge of the back of the box. These pictures were taken the first time I tried using this method, and I was very pleased with the outcome. If you were going to paint the zero line, you would tack down a chalk line and snap a chalk line across the back of the box, and then go ahead and paint that zero line. Painting a zero line is not a trivial matter. I'm not an expert, but I can comment on some of the things that I've tried. Keep in mind that the zero line is 1 centimeter wide and starts from the edge that passes through the back of the box and extends back toward the pit. That means the front edge of the line, or the line closest to the runway, is the true zero line. So you want to make that line as straight and clean as you can. I would recommend not using spray paint. I found it to be too thin and it would bleed under the tape that I used to mask off my line. You also have a tendency to spray too much paint, which can also cause a problem and lead to more bleeding. I would suggest using acrylic paint. That's what the professionals use when they paint running tracks. I tried using acrylic paint purchased from a hobby store and then applying the paint with a brush. I had to use a dabbing method because anytime I tried to brush the paint on, that would also cause it to bleed under my tape that I had used for masking. It worked, but it was cumbersome and tedious. Using a sprayer to apply acrylic paint in conjunction with a commercially purchased stencil would be the most expensive way, but in the end may be the best way.